Welcome, everyone. My name is John Capucci, and I'm the president of Assumption University. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here at Westview Freedom Academy on the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, comprised of the Odawa, the Ojibwa, and Potawatomi. And we are grateful that we are allowed to live and learn on these traditional lands. Tonight is a partnership between Sandwich First Baptist Church, which traces its origins to 1820, and Assumption University, which traces its origins to 1857. So two of the oldest institutions in the city are working together to bring you tonight's program. On behalf of my fellow co-chair, Elder Lana Talbot, I'd like to again welcome you to our Juneteenth celebration, and I'm told that this is the first time in Windsor's history that Juneteenth is being celebrated, so we have something to be very proud of this evening. This evening is made possible by a generous donation from the Dr. John Beck Fund and Dialogue at Assumption University, and we're very grateful to Dr. Beck for his visionary support in building bridges within our community. Before we start our program, I'd like to call upon the pastor of Sandwich First Baptist Church, Pastor Bruce Bishop, to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you. Again, we just want to welcome everyone here today. Being the first time this has happened, and I did a little research on it. I said to myself, wow, because I wasn't quite aware of it. I was more aware of the emancipation we had years ago, and I was reflecting back to the memorable times we had when the marching bands were marching down Olette Avenue, and we ended up going to Jackson Park, and we had such a celebration. And I wasn't aware of this particular date, which predates that date, which was quite interesting. So we want to take some time today and welcome everybody here, and we ask you to take your time and enjoy the program. They worked really hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. At this point, I invite everyone to rise for the Canadian National Anthem and the Black Anthem.
Thank you.
Let's thank Mr. Jim Walls for his musical talents. I'd like to now welcome Ms. Antoinette Seymour, University of Windsor librarian, to give a brief history of what Juneteenth is.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Juneteenth. I will give you a wee history, but before I do that, I would like everyone to know that the Black Anthem, James Weldon Johnson, who's a Bahamian American, and I was born in Nassau, Bahamas, so I'm proud of that. Just Google it and you'll see Bahamian. Okay. So a brief history of Juneteenth. Juneteenth, or June 19th, marks the abolition of slavery or enslavement in the United States. Following the enactment of President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, those who were held as enslaved persons in Confederate states were deemed free. However, there were still areas of the Confederate states that were engaged in slavery or enslavement, to be politically correct. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger ordered that slavery in the Confederate states that the enslaved in the Confederate states be set free. Texas was the last Confederate state to practice slavery. Later, in December 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified, deeming slavery illegal in the United States. The remnants of slavery in Kentucky and Delaware were also dissolved. So since then, Juneteenth has been a day of celebration in the United States and is now officially recognized as a federated holiday in the United States. Thank you.
Antoinette mentioned the Emancipation Proclamation, and one of the traditions of Juneteenth is for someone to read at least an excerpt of the Emancipation Proclamation that was promulgated by President Abraham Lincoln. So today that honor falls upon me. The Emancipation Proclamation, also known as Proclamation 95, was written by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, with an earlier proclamation composed on September 22nd, 1862. And it reads, "Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord, 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States, containing, among other things, the following to wit, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall be in rebellion against the United States, shall be thenceforward and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do not act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts that they make for actual freedom. And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from violence unless it is necessary for self-defense. And I recommend them, in all cases when allowed, that they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed services of the United States, to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts and services. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. We have a special treat today. One of our elders in the community, Elder Lana Talbot, is going to sing a very traditional song, and a song that is very close to her heart. and to the community at Sandwich Verse Baptist Church. So I invite her to come forward to sing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot with Sister Carmen Carter, and of course everyone else as well. Sure.
Why should I be nervous, right? I love the song. But one thing I do want to mention. January 1st, 1863. So many people. What do we do on the 31st of December? What do we welcome in the next year, New Year's? And when you say, Happy New Year, what was happening back in those days, back in the 1800s? People were praying that Abraham Lincoln would sign that writ of emancipation. And they did a watch service at the AME churches and the Baptist churches. Those were the places that people definitely prayed for this to go through. And that's why today people celebrate New Year's Eve. A lot of people don't know that, but that's why it's celebrated. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming forth to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming forth to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. I'm sometimes up and sometimes down, coming forth to carry me home. But still my soul feels heavenly bound, coming forth to carry me home.
I'd like to welcome Ms. Leslie McCurdy, who will recite a very special poem that is often recited on Juneteenth by Maya Angelou, Caged Bird.
Thank you.
I found it interesting because, I always do some research when I'm getting ready to perform any kind of thing. I find it really interesting that Maya Angelou wrote Caged Bird after her 4th autobiography. Her first autobiography having been called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. But before that, just before that 4th biography, she had also traveled to Egypt and Ghana. And I think she must have discovered some things there that helped her find even more freedom than just being emancipated from the state of slavery. And I just think of that as a reminder that there are a lot of things that we might encounter in our lives that can enslave us in some ways if we aren't aware and woke. So I just want to say to everybody, stay woke. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wings in the rays of the sun and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still. And his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadows shout on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings for freedom.
Thank you, Leslie. At this time, I'd like to welcome our 3 panelists, and before they come up to our panel, which was very decorated well by our 2 volunteers, Donald and Daniel in the back, thank you. I want to introduce them. So first we have Elder McCare Tulloch. And Elder McCare is a JD candidate at the University of Windsor. He also holds a Master of Sacred Theology from Yale University and a Master of Divinity from Tyndale University, and an Honors Bachelor of Arts from the University of Toronto. McCare is also an ordained minister, faithfully committed and serving and empowering others. So welcome, McCare. We also welcome from across the river Ms. Amber Mitchell, who is the curator of the Black History, curator of Black History at the Henry Ford Museum. She's a public historian who strives to center stories of African-descended peoples from the American experience. And she holds a Master's of Arts in Public and Applied History and Museum Studies from Indiana University at Indianapolis, and a Bachelor of Arts in History from Wayne State University. So welcome, Amber. And Marvin Barnes is the presiding clerk of the Religious Society of Friends, also known as the Quakers, the General Council. He is currently in his 2nd term as presiding clerk and has been a member of the Quakers since the 1990s. In addition to his work with the Society of Friends, Marvin is a retired software architect, developer, and implementer who has experienced the broad wave of information technology over his career. I'd like to welcome these 3 panelists to the panel. So each of the panelists has an area of expertise, and what we're going to do is we're going to ask each panelist a question based on their area of expertise related to Juneteenth, and then we have one general question for all 3 panelists. So we'll begin with Elder McCare Tulloch, who brings a legal perspective but also a religious perspective as well. So for Elder McCare-Tulloch, the question that you have is Juneteenth was officially recognized as a federal holiday in 2021, 156 years after the original Juneteenth in 1865. Question for you is, why did it take so long for the federal government to recognize this important holiday officially?
So first of all, can you hear me?
There's a button on the side.
Hello, hello? Is that better?
Mine seems to be the magic one.
Is this better? Yes. Wonderful. So first of all, thank you for having me, Dr. Kabuchi. And I will say that I am not yet an expert in the law, especially not American law. However, one of the reasons that I think it has taken so long is because of the difficulty that we have at times with remembering. I'm a very alliterative thinker, and for the purpose of this conversation, I'd like to introduce you to the alliteration of art. And essentially it's acknowledgement, remembering, and transformation. And it's my belief that acknowledging through remembering leads to transformation. And I think it's one thing to acknowledge that emancipation occurred. You know, as Ms. McCurdy shared, it's one thing to be emancipated from the state of slavery. But I think it's another thing to be liberated within the state of life. And in order to do the work of liberation, to continue the work of liberation, in my view, to see that transformative work take place, it requires intentional remembering. So it's a collective effort that leads to collectively acknowledging through remembering that it occurred. And I think that the reason why it took so long, if I could be candid, is because with something as sensitive as emancipation from slavery, it reminds America and reminds the world of an aspect of the American story that doesn't fit neatly within the narrative of America as most know it to be. But I think it's important that in an effort to be truthful, in an effort to be sincere, in an effort to be honest, I think we have to acknowledge the good, the bad, and the ugly, because often from the ashes, we see hope rise. And, you know, from the efforts of many African Americans within the South, from the efforts of the colonel that my historian friend will be able to speak to much more proficiently from a historical perspective. But Colonel, is it Granger? Colonel Granger, the work that he did, what's so powerful is it's a collective effort. He went to Texas to announce that the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued on the 1st of January in 1863, had not yet, many blacks in Texas had not yet been informed of this. And it was a collective effort with the work that blacks were doing and the work of Colonel Granger and other abolitionists to partner in this effort. So I think it took so long because remembering is difficult, but I believe that as we intentionally remember, we can work toward transformation.
Thanks, McCare. The next question is for Ms. Mitchell, and it's about the historical perspective that McCare just mentioned right now. So from a historical perspective, can you share a little bit about what type of activities and events individuals did to commemorate Juneteenth before it was officially announced as a federal holiday?
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you all on this 160th anniversary of Juneteenth. So it is very exciting to be here, especially here in Windsor. I think what we have to remember is that Juneteenth is one of many forms of emancipation celebrations that existed throughout the United States and the larger Americas before being federally recognized, of course. We don't need the federal government to tell us when to celebrate, right? Is the key thing. But I think because Juneteenth is so Galveston, Texas specific, we have to remember, and it's important to acknowledge, that there are many other Juneteenths throughout the United States and North America generally. So, for instance, in Michigan, our Juneteenth technically would be 1835 with the quest for statehood. In Savannah, Georgia, that Emancipation Day is December 21st because that is the day that, that coincides with Sherman's March to the Sea and the liberation that came alongside the destruction of parts of the Old South that gained freedom for the many Africans and African Americans and other African descended peoples in that area. And of course, here in Canada, the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 being what gives liberation technically via the law in these areas. But of course, all of this ultimately is resting upon, again, the law or whatever the federal government of the United States deemed appropriate. So, thinking about the Emancipation Proclamation in and of itself, it's a wartime measure. It's an important wartime measure that gives freedom to very specific groups of African Americans, those in those Confederate occupied territories, meaning that if you were in a place or a group was in a place that was occupied by Union soldiers, those folks were not free, and they wouldn't be free until the war ends in 1865. Or in the case of our Texas friends, our Galveston friends, until someone had to come riding in to let everyone know that you were free. But of course, that doesn't stop people from celebrating their freedom in a variety of ways. That means that people, even though they technically were not free in these Union-occupied territories, that doesn't mean that they didn't walk off plantations. That doesn't mean they didn't walk away from job sites. That doesn't mean they didn't self-liberate before and after the Emancipation Proclamation. That legal emancipation comes at different times across the board, varying between states. It varies between counties within states or provinces, and even towns. Prior to working at the Henry Ford, I was the Director of Education at Whitney Plantation in deep New Orleans, Louisiana. And if you know anything about Louisiana history in that area specifically, freedom for those outside of the River Road, sort of New Orleans greater area, comes via that Emancipation Proclamation. But it is the people of those plantations who, again, walk off and say, absolutely not, we are not going to work. You are no longer going to reap the benefits of our labor, whether that be physical, mental, or reproductive, not for our benefit, that Louisiana was forced to emancipate everyone in 1864. While New Orleans, of course, remains a bastion of enslavement. But the first celebrations, I think it's important to always remember, while we love to celebrate, this important moment, which always includes food. You can't have a party without food. You can't have a party without dancing. You can't have a party without singing. Juneteenth is a party. Emancipation is a party. But I also want us to remember that the first celebrations of emancipation come from those folks who self-emancipated. Those people who were freedom seekers, who didn't wait for permission. Even when they may have been free for maybe only a few hours or for the rest of their lives. Those folks who chose to self-emancipate, those runaways. Those folks who came up here to Canada were able to make their way from Virginia, from Maryland, from Kentucky, from Tennessee, coming up this way, or folks further south who may have made it to Mexico. There are deep and long-standing connections and we need to always recognize that although formal celebrations like Juneteenth have grown in popularity and are important, it's always critical to know that because we have constantly, as Africans in America or in the Americas, have always reached for our freedom, we should acknowledge that at all levels, including those who decided to do it on their own without any safety nets. But in any case, I hope that Juneteenth, this first Juneteenth celebration for the Windsor area, which is very exciting, prompts some curiosity in all of us to figure out and think through, well, when does liberation come for my family? Was it through self-emancipation? Was it via this date? Was it via that date? And also thinking about how Juneteenth liberation is affecting us now. There's no better time to be thinking about what does it mean to truly be free, whether that be by our physical chains or our mental ones. So, thank you for that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. And the next question is for Mr. Marvin Barnes, also our friend from across the river, and it's related to the religious communities. So what role did religious groups such as the Quakers play in the abolition movement?
Good evening, friends. Good evening. Well, you probably heard that term Quaker. Where did it come from? What do we mean? What is a Quaker? Well, it's the person who believes that there's that of God in everyone. No matter who you are, no matter what color you are, no matter where you came from, no matter where you're stationed in life, whether you're in jail, where you're sitting on top of a penthouse, whatever, there is that of God in there, and it needs to be cultivated. Quakers did not see for a while the evils of slavery, but when they did, they worked on the abolition movement to make sure that our friends of color were able to find opportunities away from the slave states, away from the harshness that they had to deal with. But it didn't stop there. Quakers needed educating just as much as anybody else. They may have been a little bit ahead of other folks, but they did. But there were some things that they did not recognize. You could have outright discrimination of a person of color. Water fountains, schools, you name it. But they didn't recognize initially that there was another problem. And that was very profound in the United States, and that was of privilege. Quakers have since learned that we need to deal with privilege and systemic racism. Because from the historical lessons we see that once we've overcome that, we can truly be a free people. We can freely be people who can sit down at the table and break bread together. Without that understanding that privilege has no real place in our society, to get that message across to everyone is a hard effort, and it's something that Quakers have to continue to strive for. So you don't find Quakers sitting on their laurels saying, oh, we were abolitionists and we were out running the Underground Railroad. No, we don't do that. What we see is we need to cultivate that of God in everyone, take it forward, wear it on our sleeves, and don't turn our backs on any fellow man, no matter who they are or where they are. In this society, whether it's here in Canada or in the United States, Gaza, wherever. It is an inherent right that we treat all of our fellow friends equal. And that's part of our religious movement.
Thank you, Marvin. And the last question we have for all three panelists is kind of a little opportunist on our part, but that's okay. Why is it important for Juneteenth to be celebrated in Canada, particularly on a border town like Windsor? So I don't know who wants to start the question first, but somebody's got to take the mic.
Guess I'll take the first shot. So, as a born and raised Detroiter who's lived all over the United States and has spent so much time trying to help people understand not only just the history of Africans and their descendants in America, but the long global history that American chattel slavery has, as well as its deep impacts on not just the United States, but the entire global community of the West, so North and South America and Europe. And it is really because of the labor of Africans and their descendants in this world, on this side of the planet, that we have what we have. And we don't often get a chance to acknowledge those things. And I think to be able to celebrate that sort of liberation from the stealing, frankly, of Black labor, reproductive, physical, emotional labor, here in Canada is so critical and important to understanding how deep our connections truly are. It's not just that's an American problem, or that's a problem in Brazil, or that was a problem in the Caribbean. Everybody was benefiting from the system that was chattel slavery in the United States at the beginning. And the question I guess I would have for our community here is how are we going to acknowledge the role that not only just maybe Canadians have benefited, in the ways in which Canadians have benefited from that, but also from the system of enslavement, but also how can we hold each other as neighbors accountable as well. I think, again, as a Detroiter, we often don't think about Detroit's role as a slave-holding city, which it was. There's a really great book by Taya Miles about slavery in Detroit. I would highly recommend you reading it because it talks about our linked stories about slavery in Detroit and how it connects here to Windsor. So I guess at the core of it, and I'm going to let these gentlemen take their shot as well, telling the story of Juneteenth in Windsor helps us be linked by not just borders, but by histories. It's a shared story, and we all have a role to play in learning it and sharing it with others.
I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I think that it's important for us to celebrate Juneteenth in Windsor and Canada more broadly, because it's quite easy as Canadians, I speak from a Canadian place in sharing this, that it's quite easy to see for Canadians to see Canada as the less evil cousin of America, as if the system of slavery did not exist within this nation as well, as if, as my colleague shared, the ways in which the state benefited from the free labor of African melanated people. To deny that occurred is to share a version of the history that is not entirely true. Furthermore, I think that there are generational benefits to the celebration of Juneteenth, because one of the things I appreciate most about Juneteenth is that although the painful reality of slavery is acknowledged, it is a celebration, a moment of joy. And I've heard it once said before that joy in and of itself is an act of resistance. And I think that when you look at the history of Black people across the Americas, within the Canadian context, be it in Windsor, be it in Chatham, be it in the Niagara Falls area, thinking of many of the settlements, thinking of the rich history, the Baptist history, the British Methodist Episcopal history, the Pentecostal history, I think that for a generation that is desiring to engage in the work of liberation, it can be disheartening in feeling that the work begins now and the work is so immense that it cannot be done. But to see that there are efforts that have been made, that there are people that have literally walked off of the plantation who have had services, even having not been welcomed into certain buildings, but still engaging with the Spirit of God to be liberated in their minds and in their hearts even before the liberation took place through the Emancipation Proclamation. I think it's quite empowering and, dare I say, liberating to know that the work that is occurring now, it's a work that we are able to enter into, to partner into continuing the effort of doing. I'm reminded of the Akan proverb, Sankofa, which means go back and get it. And I think that we have a much fuller, a much broader, and a much more holistically informed perspective of how to engage the future as we are aware of where we're coming from, as we are aware of many of those who have fought the fight before us, so that we can find the strength to continue the work in our time.
Your question is a little hard, and I'll give you a perspective on it. I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I lived through the riots in Cleveland. I grew up in the 70s trying to get an education and being told you're not worthy of it. I grew up with elders who said, hey, you need to be quiet. You don't need to be in the books. That's a heavy burden. But when you look at something like Juneteenth and being able to celebrate what our elders were able to pull together to give me an opportunity, to give me the ability to say, hey, if I put my head down, follow the direction of my elders and my parents and whatnot, I have something to celebrate. Not only for myself, but for the hard work that they did, getting me to the point where I am today. So you find that here in Windsor and Canada as a whole, I think the same will hold true, especially for your Indigenous people. They need to have that hope. They need to have that ray of light. They need to be able to look and say, hey, if we keep working hard, we can have a bright day ahead of us. So it has many benefits throughout the community to be able to celebrate what the people who struggle were able to accomplish. And I think that will carry on throughout history and throughout our future.
I'd like to thank our panelists for their excellent insight. Let's give them another round of applause. We can open up the floor for a couple of questions if anyone has any questions of our distinguished panelists. No one's got any questions? Oh, oh, Sister Ilana, okay, we got one. I'll come to you.
I just want to say thank you. I enjoyed each and every one of you. We have a Quaker, well, someone that did grow up as a Quaker, and I thought for certain she would have something to ask. I'm not trying to point her out or anything. I just thought it's amazing because when we grew up, all we knew was Quaker oats. But then when you realize what the Quakers absolutely did to take their lives, their families' lives in their hands, just so that those warriors and those that refused to stay on the plantation, that just got up and walked, whether it was in the middle of the night, and all those women that sat sewing, that worked on the inner part of the plantations, sewing and cooking, they were sending signals. And this is one thing that we have to realize. We still use signals. We use music, we use art as a signal, telling who we are. And I'm just happy to say, I knew about Juneteenth from Nancy Allen, whose husband was from Texas, and knew all about it. And we're sitting here in Windsor, we never understand. Juneteenth, what's that? You know? But it's amazing. And maybe someone has a question to ask.
I've heard you say that we need to extend the celebration. We've celebrated today. How do we incorporate this celebration of Juneteenth into our everyday lives so that we don't have to wait until one day a year to celebrate it?
That's an excellent question. And to incorporate it into our everyday lives, I think the more that we consider where we are, who we are, and what we have access to today, it is because of the liberative efforts of our ancestors and of our foreparents. I think that gratitude through actively considering it leads us to approach work, to approach conversation, to approach the way that we engage in school with a perspective that it's deeper than just being in the room. When there was a time when we weren't able to be in the spaces that we're in, and I think when we really consider that, you know, we don't just come in for the purpose of receiving, but really taking space and having something of value to contribute to whatever it is that we do. So not to sound repetitive or redundant, but I think that the more that we consider, the more that we think, is the more thankful we will be, but also the more active we will be in what we do.
I'm a firm believer in honoring the ancestors. The fact that they were able to endure what they endured so that somebody could meet somebody, maybe, and have a baby who had a baby, who had a baby, who had a baby, who had me, where I could be here with you all today, that is something to always honor every day. And I try to practice that daily for myself. I would also say an additional way of bringing Juneteenth into the everyday is to celebrate loudly and proudly your joy. Black joy is so critically important to my brother's point. And I often have the opportunity to enlighten folks via my work that the history of Africans in America and elsewhere in the Americas is not a sad story. It's not a depressing story. It's a story that has its highs and its lows, but it is a joyful story. It's a story of resistance. It's a story of resilience in spite of, despite of all the challenges that have been faced by us. We're still here. We'll always be here, right? And so sharing that joy of knowing who we are and sharing it with the younger generations and the generations yet unborn and those who might not look like us, but sure could use a little bit of that Black joy in their lives is the most important way to me that we celebrate Juneteenth every day. So thank you for that question.
We have two questions. And then we'll go Michael. Go ahead.
John?
Oh, sorry, the microphone.
I know Sister Lana was talking about me.
Yes. Oh, that's what she was talking about?
Yes, I know. Yes, I grew up a Quaker. And when I first met my husband, he said to me, "What are you, the Holtz?" And he's from Jamaica too, but he never really heard of the Quakers. And I said, "Yes, I'm a Quaker. I'm from the Religious Society of Friends." I went to Quaker school, I did everything. And when I came here, I couldn't find, you're the first Quaker I met. I look all over, I look in the papers, I look all over, I never hear of a Quaker. But I grew up a Quaker, and I think within me, I will always be a Quaker. Thank you.
Thank you, panel, for your wonderful exposition this evening. Can you talk to us about how do we unify our Black communities around this theme? In Windsor, we have a growing newcomer population. We have a growing Caribbean population, and often our perspective, our dialogue, it can even become confrontational around the themes of liberation, emancipation, daily living. Talk about how we can echo sentiments of unity and bring about the importance of that to our friends who may not fully understand.
The situation you're describing, your community coming together now with new faces and new perspectives and things of that nature, reminds me of my college days or my alumni days, in which a little school out in the middle of Iowa, when I got there, out of 1,200 students, there were only 100 black people, and most of them were from the Chicago area. That has since grown, the black population, but it's been primarily from people from the Caribbean, people from Africa, things of that nature. And they brought a whole perspective on what it means to be part of a black community. And there were some confrontations, and there still are some confrontations. The lessons that are being learned are, number one, we, those of us who are in place now, can't have any attitudes like other folks had before. We have to be accepting from day one. We cannot put, oh, he's from the Bahamas, so he has to eat over there, or he's from Africa, he doesn't understand our language. We can't go with that stuff. We have to be open-armed. We have to be able to sit down and talk with people. Be able to say, hey, you need some help? Ring my doorbell. You need a friend to walk you down the street? Fine, I'll help you. I'll give you an example. 2 nights ago, I'm out walking my dog. And I happened to walk by a house and the garage door was open. And I saw a couple struggling with this gigantic box. And I said, hey, do you need a hand? Didn't know them, never met them before, never saw them before. They were from Jordan. I went in and they had a 300-pound safe that they were trying to stand up on end. He had a sciatica problem. He was in his 70s and she was in her 60s. Hey, I gave him a hand, got it up to right so that they could deal with it the next day when the friends from the church came over with a 2-wheel dolly and would wheel it into their house. But we got off to a very good start by me not saying, oh, I'll give you a hand, but I only can do this, or I only can do that, or whatever. You have to be open from day one. You have to be able to say, hey, be part of our community. And you have to have your children understand that these people may be a little different than you, but they're the same as you are. And you have to keep that going every day, over and over and over. Even if you have something as bad as an auto accident with somebody from the Caribbean, fine. Get it fixed, keep on moving. Don't be taking out grudges or anything of that nature. We're all in this together. And the more we keep the barriers down, the better off we are.
I agree with my colleague, and in addition, I would add that I think that love opens the door, but communication tears down the walls of division. And I think that we have a lot more in common across the diaspora, especially as you're speaking more so within the context of, you know, Windsor or Canada more broadly. I think in having conversations about things that we share in common, I think it opens the door for those who are more informed of where we're coming from, or of celebrations like Juneteenth, to be able to plant the seed conversationally. Hey, have you heard about Juneteenth? Or are you familiar with, you know, about the history of the Black community within Windsor? And, you know, depending on what they say, I think there's opportunity to have meaningful dialogue, but sometimes starting with what we have in common creates pathways for us to better deal with the things that we may be at odds with, in a way that the rapport is established before the differences are addressed, if you will. And I think that provides those of us who are from different places within the African diaspora, and also those of us who may not necessarily be from the African diaspora, to be able to come together at the table of friendship, at the table of conversation, to really learn more about each other, to learn more about how we can appreciate the breadth of what we all bring to the table, and to really see that I don't have any gripe against you because you're different from me, but there's something I can learn from you. There's something you can learn from me. Through love and conversation, we can become one. That's my view.
It's hard to not repeat what's already been said, right? I am of the firm belief that education across the diaspora, across cultures, will solve every problem, social problem, that we as citizens can solve. Till come the revolution, that's what we got, because we're all in it together, right? And I think mainly it's because we're a lot more similar than we want to believe, but we have to learn how to shut up sometimes, right? We have to learn how to just, how about we listen? Put on your active, like I would tell some of my students, let's put on our listening ears and actually listen, not for response, but listening for understanding. It's a different kind of listening, being an active listener, critical thinking about what someone is saying. An interesting project that I worked with a teacher on a few years ago, she had a classroom, much like our world, of recent immigrants to the United States. She was based in New York, in Brooklyn, and she had students who came from the continent of Africa, various places, students that came from the Middle East, students that came from South America, Central America, from the Caribbean, and she's like, well, Amber, how do we talk about slavery here? And she starts mentioning some of the names of the countries that the students are from, excuse me. And I said, well, those are all countries that have a legacy of enslavement. Why don't you get them talking about their cultures and maybe comparing where they're from to where maybe somebody they're partnered with from? She's like, oh, I guess, Amber, I guess. And a few months later, she calls me back and she's like, you know, it worked. Like, they had started having debates about rice and beans. Is it rice and peas, or is it this, or is it that? Right, is it beans and rice? Is it rice and peas? Is it red beans and rice? Do you have red beans on Monday, or do you have red beans on Tuesday? You know, is it jollof, or is it, what kind of jollof is it? You know, right? Whose is what and better, and where's the origins of all this stuff, right? And so by the end of the class, she's like, they're out talking me. And they're becoming friends across these different cultures that outside of the classroom they wouldn't have talked to each other. And so she gave them an opportunity to find out where their similarities are. And I feel like if we take the role that children often do, and that's talking and listening and engaging with each other and seeing where we're similar rather than where we're different, I think we could maybe get there. We can get a little bit better as a community, both on this side of the border and definitely south.
Before we conclude, I want to thank our panelists once again. They did a tremendous job. And we have a very special guest here this evening who is going to offer some closing remarks. Pastor Sid Laddie is joining us today. And Pastor Sid is from the Canadian Baptists of Ontario and Quebec, and he's going to offer a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. John, and thank you, Sister Lona, for helping us understand this important occasion. And I think this is a celebration that we need to do next year as well, too. I bring you greetings from our Baptist family, Canadian Baptist Ontario and Quebec. I'm one of the denominational leaders for our Baptist family. And I want to tell you that we are in support of what you're doing here. And we love our churches to be involved in things like this. Why do I say this? I say it because the story that we're hearing tonight is their story, but it's also our story. The story is about how you can be declared free, but not think free. Declared free but not live free. Declared free but not behave free. Their story is our story. Their story is the story that the churches, our Baptist churches, want our communities to understand. You can be declared free but not live free. Declared free but not think free. Declared free but not behave free. Declared free, just not live your best life. I love what you're doing here. Absolutely. So I just want you to know you have our support and you have our prayers, and we'll stand with you. And what you need, anything that you need, you can ask our churches and we'll support you in it. So thank you for all you're doing.
Sister Lana has a few closing remarks.
Sure.
Well, I have a minute. I just want to invite everybody to our next Freedom Celebration. We have an Emancipation Jubilee that is hosted by the Black Council of Windsor, Essex. It will run August 2nd through the 4th. August 2nd, we celebrate and have a party at the Caribbean Center. August 3rd, we're at Sandwich First Baptist Church to celebrate the Underground Railroad. And August 4th, the Monday, we go to Jackson Park for a family gathering to sort of take back the park that was once the home of the great famous Emancipation celebrations in Windsor. So I hope you'll join us all for that too.
Not that I'm too old to remember. We at Sandwich First Baptist Church are doing an Underground Railroad Museum. And I'm happy to say that we have 2 containers down. We're going to start working on the inside. This is something Windsor doesn't have, a black museum. All the stuff that the Underground Railroad has to do with this area, we have not been respected. And I think that's one of the important words, respect. Not just black on black, but black and all. Black, white, red, yellow, I don't care. We don't respect each other. And when we can share things and show people our problems, then maybe they will start respecting us. One other thing I want to mention is that Mr. Emancipation, Walter Perry, brought thousands of people, maybe even millions of people from 1936, I'd say, to the 60s. He brought people from all over the world celebrating emancipation. And Monday, they have, a monument in honor of Walter Perry, Mr. Emancipation. So we have a lot of things that we here in Windsor should be proud of. And anybody that wants to give a donation, $20 or more, you're welcome to send it to sandwichfirstbaptistchurch.ca. I believe that's the thing, and we will give you the tax receipt. 20 and over. But I'm just grateful for all that came, and Pam, thank you so much, and my brother, Dr. John. We're brother and sister, and it's amazing. We were in what should I say? We were in conversation with each other, never even meeting each other. And I don't know how many fundraisers or how many things have we done. We've done 3 or 4 big things. And we're proud. Catholic, this is the thing. Religion, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, whether you're Baptist, Methodist, Jewish, Arabic, anything. We're all human beings. And I don't care, anyone if you cut, you'll bleed. And I don't think it'll be purple blood. Beware. And I like to clown sometimes. Thank you. That's all I have.
Can you do it or not?
Yeah.
Sure.
I was in a car accident to go somebody's son. I'm using my walker instead of my cane. That's okay.
I've been working with Sandwich Baptist Church for 3 years now, and we started when the Right Honorable Madame Michael Jean came to Windsor for the first time. And Sister Lana and I met each other, and that was the first time she was ever invited to Assumption Church. And the next day I went to Sandwich First, and that was the first time I was over there. So I'm very proud of the relationship we have, and I want to stress something that she asked me to stress too, about the Underground Railroad Museum. That's something that's integral, and it's not just something for one community, it's for the entire community. We all have to get behind it. And Sister Lana asked for support tonight. So I have something that I want to give personally to Sister Lana. And I'd like to call upon Pastor Bruce and Pastor Sid Laddie and Sister Carmen to come forward. This is not in the program. For those of you that are looking, I can see people are looking to find where this is. In honor of our first Juneteenth, and it's not going to be the last, and I know Lana's going to start to cry, so don't look at me. I want to make a very special and heartfelt gift from me to Sandwich First Baptist Church in the amount of $1,865 in honor of Juneteenth. Congratulations, and let's get this museum done.
My friend, my brother. You see, it doesn't matter what you call him. None of that. That's my friend. And I tell everybody, I say, you know my friend. They say, who's your friend? I said, Dr. John Capucci. He's definitely my friend. Sent by God. And I honor it. And I look up to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We have a dessert, and I did some research. The tradition for Juneteenth is to have red velvet cake. So please enjoy some red velvet cake. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Westview High School for welcoming us here.